Be ready soon.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
My Zoom app seems to have frozen. If I disappear, I will,
Yeah.
especially in mid-speech, I'll come back.
It sometimes does that. I think sometimes the internet connections, the packages don't go through quite right.
Correct. But I will start talking, even though I can't see my Zoom app and people can't see me. And if I drop out,
I can hear you.
You can't?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay. So it's because it's 4 o'clock. So good afternoon, everybody who has joined. Thank you for joining us today, Wednesday, July 8th. This is our weekly COVID-19 SBA update with Chris, and he's going to give us some of his information he's found out in the latest updates from the SBA. For those of you who have been on before, you know this, but for those of you who are new, if we encourage questions, we'd love for you to ask questions, and we try and answer all the questions that we can. And we generally do a pretty good job of getting to everyone's questions. Please use the Q&A function in this. Don't use the chat function or the raise hands, because we don't typically monitor that. It's easier for us to make sure everybody's questions are going to get answered if we use the Q&A function. So I'm having a couple of technical hitches, so if I drop out, I'll jump back in, but I'm going to hand over now to Chris, who will get started with this week's topic.
Yes, good afternoon with another installment of our SBA COVID support update. And today I thought that I was going to do mostly frequently asked questions. I've gotten a lot of questions over the week and repeated same of the type questions. So I wanted to cover some of those, the ones I've gotten most, and a little bit of what I think might be the most important. You will now also be able to see some videos that we do of these updates, and also a few summary videos that I have done that, so either you Google Chris Carlsson PPP videos or Google SCORE PPP videos, and you can pick up on those. I know that you got an email reminder of this that contained the process of doing the worksheet for the PPP forgiveness calculation. And that's not really what I'm going to do today. I think I confused Robert when he to send those out in conjunction with this. But what you have there, we sent out the worksheet that you can use, and we sent out the link to the instructions on how to use that worksheet for the PPP forgiveness easy form. So one question that I have seen in the last week quite frequently is, should I take the EIDL loan? And there is no real easy answer to that question. The first one is the obvious one. Do you need the money? And not only do you need the money today, but do you need the money a little bit long term? What does your cash flow calculation say when you look out? If you are a seasonal business and the cash flow calculation for next year says it's tight, then I would say the prudent business decision is to take the loan. It very much has to do with that. If you run out of money, nothing else really matters. And I am guessing, feeling that the business climate could be tough late summer, early fall here. Also depends on how much flexibility do you want or need for your business in terms of the capital and the cash that you want. And when you do your cash flow calculations, what does it say? How tight is it? If you make it with assuming that you're going to do 70% of what you otherwise do, how good do you think that really is based on what you do now, what you hear, etc.? Could it be 50%? Now what happens if that happens? Then another factor in making that decision is, does it affect you getting other and bigger, cheaper funding later on? Because this loan is going to sit there, it's going to show up, and other lenders may not like it, especially if it's over 25,000 and it's collateralized, then this goes in front. But if that's not the case, if you get more money here and it's cheaper than other money you could get, then that doesn't matter. And then ask how it affects your balance sheet. It depends on what you do. Some people have government contracts, for example, where you need to have at least a 1-to-1 ratio, quick ratio between current assets and current liabilities. Getting this money in on a 30-year loan gives you the cash in current assets, but it gives you a long-term obligation, helping a ratio if you think you're going to get in trouble over that ratio. This would help. Also think about that if less than 200 grand, there's no personal guarantee, so you're not going to get stuck yourself if you get upside down on this loan. And in this environment, we have to consider the possibility that we could get upside down. And if it's less than 25K, there's no collateralization. I think there's very few circumstances I wouldn't take it, if no other reason to sit there with flexibility. If you want the flexibility, you can take the loan, and then if nothing happens, it's okay. Whatever time frame you're looking at, if a year from now, then you can just give the money back without any fuss. And I've said it a couple of times, I don't know this, just a gut feeling that this at one point in time might end up getting forgiven. I don't know that. I'm just thinking about how are they actually going to do this? What's going to happen if a lot of people start defaulting on this? Are they really going to put millions of small businesses into default? Don't know that, but I feel remiss if I wouldn't mention it. So another question is, what can I use the money for? And there are a lot of descriptions in these loan applications and what people say. I think, and that's the way I'm approaching it in our businesses, is that for any legit business expenses, especially working capital. And in the PPP case, it's really a question of what is forgivable and not forgivable. Here is what I would not use it for. And in some cases, I kind of have to tell some people, no, you should not. You should not really at this point use it to pay off other loans. Should not use it to buy luxury items. And we saw that was just somebody today. I actually saw that somebody got a lot of money and took the money and used it for down payment on a house. That is not legitimate business expenses, and you're exposing yourself unnecessarily. If that's what it's used for, I wouldn't. Invest in the business, let it sit in the business, and later on do what you feel like you want to do. Unless it's an owner replacement compensation, Schedule C and K1 used for the PPP loan, I would also at this point not do distributions to myself. If I'm an owner employee, and this is all based on employee payroll, the loan was, I would not go and do a lot of distribution to myself right now. There's going to be a period of time, and I'm not sure if that was extended beyond 6/30. I think it was to 12/31, but I'm not sure because I really haven't seen it, when the restriction for use of money ends. At one point in time, restriction ends and do what you want. Some confusion as to what a covered period is. And a covered period is the time between when you got the funding and then the 8 to the 24 weeks that you pick as a covered period. That is the time in which you count and measure the expenses that are eligible for forgiveness. That's what the covered period is. You got the money on day one, and you count 8, 9, 24 weeks out, and you count out how much payroll there is, how much other eligible, and that is what is the covered period, that covered period of time where you count. And when can I apply for forgiveness? You can apply anywhere between the 8 and the 24 weeks, but you must have spent all the PPP money you got to do it at that point. Again, I have gotten a lot of questions from sole proprietors, large and small, on how this works. So for the loan itself, the Schedule C is used, and the Schedule C for 2019 is used then, and you divide that by 12 and multiply by 2.5. That's what the loan amount becomes. And in the forgiveness, it becomes the same amount because it's deemed to be owner replacement compensation. So basically, the loan amount goes on box 1, on the 3 boxes, on the easy form, and then on line 1 goes the amount. So that's how that works. And another thing, with the extensions that have been going around, people are a little bit confused about that. One extension was for the PPP loan applications themselves. For people who have not yet applied, the extension was from 6/30 to 8/8. So people who haven't applied yet, you now have till 8/8 to apply. Then there was an extension for the forgiveness of the covered period, was extended to be between 8 to 24 weeks. That extension does not affect the loan amount. It only affects the time period and how much you can count into the forgivable amount. Should we take, is there any questions?
Right now, there are no questions. Does anybody, if anybody has any questions, please go ahead and post them in the Q&A box. But right now, no questions.
Okay. Can I get a second PPP loan? There is talk about being able to do that for certain industries, and it could be that it's extended. I think it depends on how quickly and to what extent the economy bounces back here. At this point, though, you cannot get more than one PPP loan for an entity. If you have several entities, if you have several corporations, and you have some corporations that you didn't apply for, you didn't use their payroll, you didn't use the expenses as a basis for the PPP loan, then you can do that, but that's for that entity. For the same entity, for the same person as sole proprietor, you can only get one PPP loan at this point. And that has nothing to do with the EIDL. You can get an EIDL loan and get a PPP loan. Absolutely, you can do both. Compensations for which you can get forgiveness are capped. For owner employees, that cap is 20.83% of the 2019 compensation, or if the compensation was over 100,000, a maximum of 20,833. Now the question also becomes, Okay, so what if I go 12 weeks and then I do the forgiveness application? It is not directly actually addressed anywhere, but I think that the appropriate way to be conservative is to say that it's $1,923 per week up until a maximum of the 20.83% or 20,000. It could be that it for 12 weeks is 20,000, but we don't know. And I would say I wouldn't do it in advance of the 24 weeks or be in advance of getting to the 20,000 by 1923 per week. That would just be taking a risk of not actually being able to do it. And also, it's more a question of how will the bank, your lender, interpret what it is? Because the lender is the gatekeeper. They program their application process for forgiveness. So it's been, you know what they say. If they say no, it kind of no. Because you really don't want to get through the expense of challenging them. So you want to, when you do it, you want to make sure that it will go through. For employees, as we know, the PPP loan was capped for any employee. You couldn't count any more than 100,000. It's the same in forgiveness, $46,154 or $1,923 per week. And the same caveat if you do something in between 8 and the 24 weeks. I believe that the best day is to look at the 1923 per week to add that tally up. Is EIDL grant deducted from PPP forgiveness? Yes, it is. And it's just the initial EIDL grant that was $1,000 per employee or $10,000 maximum. It's that initial. And when you do the application, for the forgiveness, don't deduct that yourself. There's no line there. Don't take it upon yourself, because after you submit it, after the bank says yes, submit it, SBA will then deduct the EIDL grant. So if you do it yourself beforehand, then SBA will do it again. So again, what is forgiven? And we've been over this quite a few times. And it is, the basis for it is payroll expenses, the gross payroll, company portion of health insurance, company portion of retirement benefit, and state and local payroll taxes. That has to be at least 60% of the payroll expenses. And then the other 40% of, 60% of forgiveness money. Then the other eligible expenses, rent, business interest expenses, utilities, can be 40% of the forgiven amount. And then remind you again that since we're all looking at up to 24 weeks, you really should be able to get 100% forgiveness. If you don't, I would go back again and take a look, because I feel it very difficult not to get 100% forgiveness. And when you look at all this, it's a reminder, it's not a frequently asked question, but to keep in mind what's important is the covered period. You know what that is, to add up your expenses within that. Get your backup, the payroll records, the revenue records if you need it, and then track on the worksheet and do the application. Then when all this is said and done, what we need to do now, folks, is we need to survive. We truly do need to survive. We need to do what we can and then apply for the forgiveness, because that's going to be really important once you go out to the payback period, so you don't have to deal with that after all this. It does look like we have a couple of questions are closed. Should we take a question and then do our
Then launch our poll?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Barbara has asked, she hasn't used the PPP loan she received on 4/6 because she has a small preschool that's been closed. She's hoping to reopen on 8/17, but will not be able to bring everyone back because she's not going to have enough clients. How does she use the PPP and not have to pay it back?
Okay, so it was received on 4/6, and on 4/6, 24 weeks from 4/6 would be somewhere around end of September, I think. So from 8/17 to end of September, it's going to be about, yeah, it's going to be tight. You need 40% of the 60% of the amount as payroll for the period of time. And I think that you want to take advantage of the 40% addition for rent and all those kind of things. So see what you can do without killing your cash flow to get enough payroll in there in the month, 4 to 6 weeks that you have.
And then would it be, I mean, just adding on that, would it be that, and almost use whatever's not forgiven as a free loan, for lack of a better words, right?
Yeah.
As you know, percent interest.
That is correct. I mean, you still have 10 months to apply for the forgiveness. So, and then you have some months after that before you need to start paying. So you have a runway there, and be prudent with the money and get as much as you can in there to be in the forgiveness amount. That's a tough situation where you can't reopen. I can relate to that one. If I receive 10,000 EIDL grant money and that gets deducted from my PPP loan, then 10,000 of my PPP will not be forgiven. That is true. That is a true statement, and that is how it works. So you can, it won't let it double dip on that. Yes. Okay, you want to do the poll?
Yeah, let's launch the poll. Hold on. So we're going to launch a poll. There's just asking a couple of questions about how your business is and surviving during these times and what the future looks like. So it's just 3 questions. So encourage everyone just to perhaps try and answer the poll. We'll keep it running for a bit. We can keep going and keep the poll running.
Yeah. So, but what I didn't have in my PowerPoint here, what I also wanted to remind everybody about is that you do want to get to the easy form for forgiveness application, and it applies to sole proprietors. And then also, if you're not a sole proprietor, there are 2 different things. That one of them, we only need to get to one of them. And in both cases is that if you did not reduce the rate of pay for anybody by more than 25%, and you did not reduce the number of full-time employees compared to beginning of the year to the end of the covered period, or by 12/31. And the same with the number of paid hours. Then you can do the easy form, or if you didn't reduce the rate of pay by anybody by more for anybody by more than 25%, and you had a decrease in business level, i.e. revenues, that was caused by a directive on either HHS, CDC, or the state level, then you also qualify for the easy. I think that second one there, almost everybody should be able to fit into that second one. And also you got the worksheet that will allow you to be able to dump your payroll into that, payroll reports into that, and you should be able to do those calculations without any problem. Did we get any answer to the poll?
We did. Do you want to just move forwards, or do you want me to launch the poll, launch the results?
Let's just launch the results, see what it says.
So there we go. I think, can everybody see it?
Okay. Yeah, it's the first one is kind of what I feared and what we hear, right? How is business compared to last year? Same, worse. It's a few say 22% same, worse 67, much worse 11. It's actually a little bit better than I thought it would be. And when do you think we're back to normal? 3 months, 33%, 6 months, 22, 12 months, 22, more, 22. So 60, almost 2/3 think it's going to take 6 months or more to get back to normal business. That's, I think, is my feeling to what kind of how it feels out there. What are your chances of survival? Good to very good, it's 55%. So that's a positive, I think. More than half of us think that we have a good chance of surviving. Average, another 33%. 11% thinks is poor, and nobody very poor. I am glad to hear that there's somewhat of a positive sentiment out there on how we will be able to survive. So thanks everybody for answering.
I actually think that's great. I like to hear that as well. I think that's it's good to hear that there's a, you know, a bigger percentage of people that thinking they have chances of survival. I like that. That's a good.
Me too. And that's all I had today. And part of that is that there also hasn't really been any updates from the SBA since the last time, other than the extension to 8/8. And again, as I sent out to everybody, if you know somebody who haven't done it yet, tell them to do it, please. Don't let a friend not PPP, because we all need everybody to survive.
And one, I would add to that, just I know a lot of banks are no longer accepting PPP applications, but there are some of the online banks. American Express for customers is still taking applications. I know there's Blue Vine is taking applications.
Cabbage is also.
Cabbage is taking applications, and there's another one that I came across the other day. But so if you Google, you know, who's still taking them, there are a handful that are still taking PPP applications.
Yep. And what we see at this point is that it's a lot of the non-traditional, non-banking lenders who are still doing it. And now I'm also starting to see a lot of marketing and pushing and emails and calls for it. Just make sure that you know somebody or you are doing it. Make sure that it's a PPP application and not an MCA. They are very deceptive. So if you do it. Okay.
All right. I think so. Does anybody else have any questions? I'll just give a couple of seconds for people to give questions. And we'll just wait for a second. I'll just say that this week on Friday, we have a webinar at 11 a.m., which is about it's with psychologist, Dr. Alison Block. She's going to be helping people to kind of figure out how to manage emotions in business, and some good tools to use to not perhaps be reactive to situations, take a step back and breathe. So I think that's going to be quite helpful in these times to just find out some good tools to use. And we have a few more coming up over the next few weeks. If you take a look on our website and on our Facebook page, you'll see them. Also, as always, this is going to go onto our YouTube channel, and they are going up much more timely now. We have someone who's actually taken over doing the posting of the YouTube videos for us, which is great help. So they'll be going up timely after the webinars. And I think there's no more questions, Chris. So I think unless you have anything else, we can say goodbye to everyone and let them go on with their afternoon.
Very good. For the first time, we're actually making it in half an hour.
I know, it's great. That means you're doing a great job at relaying the information.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for attending. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Doris. Thanks everyone for attending.